I'm Alan Robarge, a psychotherapist and a relationship coach. Welcome to Improve Your Relationships, where I like to talk about attachment injuries and healing attachment trauma. And on this video, let's talk about a very specific cause of attachment trauma in your family, and that is your parent didn't like you. So even for me to say that, even for you to hear it, can be challenging. This video might not apply to everyone, so that's understandable. But if this resonates with you, perhaps your parent had directed some resentment towards you, your parent just was not friendly, and over time, or very even quickly as a child, you got the thought, you had the sense of, my parent doesn't even like me. And then it could be even more confusing if your parent loved you and you loved your parent, but at the same time, you never really felt your parent liked you. So this can create attachment trauma, and that's what we're going to explore on this video. I want to acknowledge this is a part of a series, a 6-part series on grieving family attachment trauma, and very much we're just going to name some of these scenarios. So in this self-directed healing series, there is a handout that I'm offering on grieving that offers some definitions to grieving. If this interests you, you can sign up and have this emailed to you. It's alanrobarge.com/grieving if you want to get that handout. Now, we're mostly just going to really hold space and give attention to some of these dynamics. We're not necessarily going to go into all of the complexities of it, and we're not necessarily going to completely go into options for how to work with it. But by right of naming it, there's a freedom. So the purpose here is to name many of these scenarios that oftentimes live within us as a secret, or live in the place of the unknown, or live in a place that don't have a voice. Because as a child, it's frightening and wildly painful to voice, to bring into consciousness, and then actually say the words, my parent doesn't like me. So we're putting it on this video to create this context, to be able to say it in such a way that to finally take ownership. And there's some freedom and grieving that can occur just when we actually name it. The next thing that we're doing with regards to this as a grieving series is that by naming it, we normalize it. And in the process, we're able to put into context, as painful as this is for you, that these things happen, and that we work and rework and work and rework over this reality. And in the process of naming it and giving it a context, in the process of normalizing it, we hopefully get a little bit of distance from it, and we are able to create some spaciousness around it. And as a result, we're making peace with our past. We're trying to come up with a way to integrate this really impossible piece of information. And it was wildly impossible when you're 5 or 8 or 12 or whatever age you are. You could be 32. It's still not pleasant. It's just completely unpleasant to let in the crushing truth and the reality that your parent didn't like you. And perhaps you've already known this, perhaps it's not new, but what we're trying to do here is name it, normalize it, and then lastly, in the grief process, as part of the grief process, we realize that we're not alone. You're not the only one watching this video. You're not the only one who's experienced these feelings. And because we're not alone, we could really use as a resource realizing that we are interconnected to other people who've had similar experiences, and that when we name it, we can normalize it and realize that in fact we're not as isolated by right of this attachment trauma. It is painful. It is sad that this has happened. It is sad that this is the experience that you have had, but we want to try to really come into the fullness of our maturing into. There's a humility and it takes a profound amount of courage and maturity to be able to directly look at the truth that your parent didn't really like you. So grieving, this process of grieving, self-directed healing, it means that you're going to feel the feelings that get activated and triggered, even as I'm already starting to talk about this. It's unpleasant, it's painful, it's difficult. You have to define, you have to inventory, what are your grieving skills? How do you feel your feelings? If this is too much, if this is too provocative, if this is too triggering, then turn the video off and realize this is not something that you can manage at this time. But if you are at a place where you can trust your own guidance in your self-directed healing process, it can be helpful to use the video, this moment, to hold some space, to just let the truth out that you have some history where your parent didn't like you. This could mean that your parent resented you. This could mean that your parent had a kind of look of disgust on his or her face. The parent could have played games through withholding their affection to punish you, to let you know that that your mother, that he or she doesn't like you. It could have been undermining your decisions and your choices, to needing to be contrary to, if you liked something, the parent would make a comment and let you know that he or she didn't like that, showing disapproval because it was linking to this bigger disapproval of who you are. And this really is a crushing experience to a child's sense of self. You know, if my parent doesn't like me as a person, it then really makes me question my worth and can provoke these profound feelings of insecurity and create some confusion about making choices and taking action. It really just provokes a lot of insecurity. So empathy to you, and acknowledge, that talking about this, even on this video, can be challenging. So let's repeat. We're naming it. We're, as a result, hopefully normalizing it. We're realizing that we're not alone. Many of us have experienced this. And in the process of grieving, we're inviting feeling the feelings. And this takes a certain amount of skill and an awareness of what are your tools in your tool bag, what are your grieving skills, so that you can begin to practice feeling these feelings and processing them. Sometimes those feelings are going to be very overwhelming and they're going to be very raw, as if you're like a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old and you're just in pure crushing emotion. Very, very sad, painful stuff. Other times, grieving can feel deeply mature and have a kind of a very almost rooted in a deep wisdom of perspective and able to see clearly. And so it's not, grieving is not so much this really provocative emotional experience. It's more of a resignation and dropping into the ability to settle into the truth, to make peace with what is happening. And this is not a one-time process. You might go through chapters. You might realize that this is, that you've gone through a particular chapter, and then something happens in your life and provokes, let's say some form of rejection, something. You meet someone who's a potential new friend, who's very, that you're excited, and you get some comment of disapproval. It could very much trigger this history of linking to when you receive disapproval from a parent. The overall bigger picture of all of this, of why do we purposefully address the things that are painful, to outright say, your parent didn't like you. And why would we say that? It does, when we are able to align with the natural healing processes of grieving, which puts us on board with our own growth and development and maturity. And we are constantly reworking what was the reality back then, and then how does it help us accept the reality today, and the layers of disappointment and the layers of hurt. And the reason why we do this, besides obviously and hopefully freeing us from the intensity of the feelings and the pain that has caused, is it invites choice, and it invites some new resources. And so there's a very concrete purpose in grieving, and that we value and believe that through the process of maturing, of being conscious of the hurts that happened to us, we will in fact discover new choices and invite activating new resources. And that's where we discover some freedom and some lightness. And that's how we make peace with the past. Or the phrase that is very popular, we can say that's how we let go. But in the meantime, if you're perhaps just stumbling upon this, if you're really doing some healing work around attachment injuries and how you might have attachment trauma, to look at your family of origin and to look at, well, what were the interactions that impacted you negatively or impacted you in a way that were hurtful. And for many people, one of those ways is that a parent was not loving and was not kind to the point that communicated to the child, I don't even really like you. And the child, and as an adult child, or looking back on your life now as an adult, and trying to inventory, when were the experiences when this parent, when my mother, when my father, or if it's a primary caregiver, your aunt or a grandmother, you know, when were the experiences when they looked at you with a sense of preciousness, with a sense of tenderness, with just really enjoying you for who you are, not because you, had to prove your worth, not because you had to do some kind of job for them or be some kind of an extension of the reflection of who they wanted you to be, but just purely you were able to be yourself, and they celebrated and enjoyed you for you. And if you didn't have that, and in fact you had the complete opposite, where you got the impression, or they outright directly told you that you're doing something wrong for who you are as a human being, or that if they actually said at some point that they didn't like you, this cuts to the core, and this is so painful. So you must take care of yourself. You must use this video as an inspiration to create some framework to say, what is your path of self-directed healing? What tools do you need to begin to look at this history of these places where there is hurt and where you're still impacted by this history and how it's impacting how you're in relationship today? And chances are it's impacting your sense of worth and continues to feed a feeling of insecurity. So from that place, have empathy to you and have empathy for yourself. We breathe in some compassion. We breathe in some kindness. We breathe in some gentleness. I mean, this is so wildly painful and very, very hard to work with. So let's create some ending for this video. Number one, this is a series of a total of 6 videos. And if you're already feeling the weight and the heaviness of this video, it's just going to continue more in the same of really saying some really difficult things that can be helpful to be honest with ourselves that we need to say them in the spirit of activating our own healing process, in the spirit of activating the grief of feeling our feelings, that is going to invite and court discovering choice, defining what happened and what needs to happen for moving forward, and hopefully inviting some new resources so that you don't need to continue living under the crushing hurt of knowing that your parent didn't like you. So take care of yourself. Go to alanrobarge.com/grieving if you want to get a handout that shares some ideas, definitions about what is grieving. And then stay tuned for the next video. If you want to see more just like this, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. And I will see you on the next video. Thank you.